Hey guys, and we are live. Well, thank you guys for checking out Author Chat. Today we have Stephanie. I'm not gonna. What is it? Strom?
You did it perfectly.
Woo!
Yes.
I'm horrible at names. We have Stephanie Strohm of Love a la Mode, and you guys can actually win this signed copy of this book. The giveaway is up now on the site, so definitely check it out. And we're going to get into the questions. So thank you so much for coming on, Stephanie.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
All right, so first off, the normal stuff. Tell us about who you are and your book titles.
Yeah. So hi, I'm Stephanie. I write young adult romantic comedies. And Love a la Mode is actually my 7th book. I feel like most of the other ones people know are either It's Not Me, It's You or Prince in Disguise. But Love a la Mode came out in November, and it tells the story of a girl named Rosie from Ohio who loves to bake, and a boy named Henry from Chicago who loves to cook. And the two of them meet on their way to a cooking program in Paris for high school juniors, where they're going to spend the year learning all about the ins and outs of cooking from a series of French chefs. And while they're there, they cook, they eat, and no surprise, they fall in love along the way. So that's basically what that's about.
Great. All right, so the first actual question is so after publishing, you said 7 books.
Yeah.
It any easier to go through the editing process and the publication process?
I would say that I'm not a great self-editor, but I love getting notes from other people. And I do feel like that bit of the process has gotten easier. Like I've always really enjoyed getting notes from my editor and other people on the publishing team, but I feel like now I've gotten a lot more efficient at incorporating them. I do think I come from a theater background, which I think made me really used to taking lots of notes on things. So like, I don't know if I've ever told my editor, like, no, I won't change that. I'm always like really willing to do stuff. And I feel really fortunate that all of the editors I've worked with have been fantastic and really helped, always really help kind of get to what I am trying to do, even if I don't do it exactly right the first time. I would say the things that don't get easier are sort of like the stuff that happens after publication. Like my books don't have a huge marketing budget. And so I feel like a lot of the trying to get the word out, publicity promotion stuff falls on me, and I'm not great at it. Like I love writing, but it's, I find like a lot of the other stuff that happens after is hard for me. Like I don't always put in the time that I should necessarily, and that doesn't get any easier. I think I've gotten a little bit better about not getting my feelings hurt too much when people don't like the book. I struggled with that a lot at the beginning, but I think that's something I'm constantly working on.
I think all authors have to really struggle with that, and I think it really just comes down to the fact, not everybody can like the same things.
Totally.
And it really depends on, what each reader loves. Like my daughter, she loves contemporary. Every time I try to give her a fantasy book, she's just like not into it. Yeah. And I'm like, you wound me.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly don't like every book I read, so I try to remember that.
Okay, of all your books, which cover do you love the most and why?
Oh, so I will say I do really love the Love a la Mode cover. There's something about the pink and the teal together, like the color, I find really appealing. But I think my #1 favorite would be the hardcover of Prince in Disguise, which has like you see 2 people's hands, one with a mug of tea and one with a cup of hot chocolate. And that's my favorite cover because initially the hot chocolate didn't have marshmallows, and I asked if they could add mini marshmallows, and they did. So I feel like I was like really an integral part of bringing the marshmallows to that cover.
That's all. I think that we actually reviewed the Prince in Disguise as well when it first came out, and I had an ARC of Love a la Mode. And those covers kind of look very similar to each other. So I'm really happy that they changed it so it could like stand on its own.
Yeah, so the initial cover for Love a la Mode was done by the same artist, and I think they wanted them to have sort of the same feel. And then after the ARCs were printed, they switched over to this one, which like I think graphically is a little more eye catching. Like there's a lot going on in the other cover, and I liked it, but I don't know, this one kind of pops a little bit more for me.
Right. I like this cover a little better. Yeah. It's so cute. Yeah. Right. Which book was the hardest to write and which was the easiest?
Ooh. So I actually had another book come out on Tuesday. That's Not What I Heard. And that was the hardest book for me to write because I was 2 months pregnant at the time. And I was really, really nauseous. And I wrote most of the book lying down in bed, like typing with one hand. And they only gave me 3 weeks to write it. And it's like a 350-page book. So it was a significant amount of writing to accomplish in 3 weeks while nauseous. So that was a struggle to go through. That was like the hardest one to draft. Love a la Mode went through the most rounds of revisions, I think because it was something I'd wanted to do for a long time. And like, I really wanted to get everything right. It was also the first time I'd ever written in third person. So that had the longest editing process. I think the easiest one to write was It's Not Me, It's You, which is a story of a girl named Avery who interviews all of her ex-boyfriends to find out why her relationships haven't lasted. And Avery is just like an extremely, I don't always like using the word bossy to describe women, but like bossy is a good way to describe her. She's a very strong personality. And for whatever reason, just kind of channeling her voice was, maybe I'm very bossy, was really easy for me. And so like that book just kind of flowed really nicely. And I think that one was probably the easiest to write.
Yeah, I could not have seen writing a book being 2 months pregnant. I know, but with both of my girls, pregnancy like just about kills me. I was like in bed asleep, sleep as much as possible.
It was not fun. And I think there's a reason that like, as soon as I finished the draft, I didn't write a single word the whole rest of the time I was pregnant. I was just like, and I'm done. I can't
blame you.
Else. Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, it was rough.
So now you have actually people have submitted questions.
Awesome.
So the first one is for Love a la Mode. It takes place during a culinary competition. Do you have any background in the culinary arts?
So I am a like passionate home baker. I love to bake. A lot of the stuff that Rosie writes about in the book is exactly the way I feel about baking. When I was in high school, actually, I took kind of like a weekend pastry class in New York. I grew up in Connecticut, so I could take the train into New York. And it was like at a professional cooking school, but I wasn't enrolled full time. It was like a class on the weekend, mostly with adults. And that's kind of the only formal pastry training I have. Other than that, it's all just kind of stuff that I've researched and done myself. My husband also loves to cook. He and his sister actually published a cookbook a couple years ago. So it's nice to have some like in-home help with that too.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How much research did you have to do for Love a la Mode, and which book did you do the most research for?
Love a la Mode is probably the book I've done the most research for. Some of it was stuff I knew. When I was in college, I studied abroad in Poitiers, which is about an hour and a half south of Paris. So I have been to Paris, although I have not been in a while, because at this point that was like more than a decade ago. So I did a lot of like Google Maps research where I was constantly taking like the little man and putting him in to see street view of places. And then for Love a la Mode, I did a lot of double checking about pastry terms and cooking terms, things that like I thought I knew, but I wanted to make sure that I was doing the right thing. So it was a lot of even like going to websites that were in French and trying to like brush off my rusty French minor to make sure I was saying the right things about pastry. And then doing research on different culinary programs, even things like I didn't know the name for all the different knife cuts, researching that. And then I did a lot of, not even all that much ended up in the book, but a lot of research into Korean restaurants, because Henry, the love interest, his family is Korean American, and he grows up working in his dad's Korean restaurants. Luckily, there's like an awesome Korean food scene here in Chicago. So there was one month in February where I went to a different Korean restaurant every weekend, and I would like talk to the chefs and the people who owned it. And it was so much fun to like eat all this delicious Korean food and learn a little bit about a different food culture than the one that I grew up with.
That was actually my next question. Because this book centers on so much food, did you find yourself eating a lot more than what you normally do, snacking?
I mean, I already do eat a lot. So I actually, I do like every week I do a different baking project. It's usually something like easy, like cookies. So I like always have my like bake of the week. We have a really good French bakery I can walk to. So I found myself being like, I need a croissant for inspiration. So I did a lot of that. And then I ate a ton of Korean food, just trying to like immerse myself in those flavors as well. And then I just like kind of get snacky when I write, especially when I'm writing about food. One time the bakery near me has like little tables. And so I went to the bakery while I was writing and I was like, oh, I'll get a baguette to take home. And then as I'm writing, I looked down and I realized that I ate an entire loaf of bread while I was just sitting there writing. I was like, oh, gotta get another one. So yes, it made me very hungry. I snacked a lot.
Oh, yes. All right. So the next question is, Rosie had a hard time early on in the competition with the level of skills she had. Why did you choose to make her skills lower than some of the other competitors?
It was more, so there are two reasons. One of them was when I was in high school, I was like, anytime I tried, even like when I was in high school, I should have been like old enough to deal with this. I would get extremely homesick. Like I had a really hard time being away from home. And that was something I kind of wanted to explore through Rosie. And then the other thing was, it's not even so much that Rosie's skills are worse than everyone else's overall. They're just different. Like she's much better at baking than they all are, except when she has her like terrible crisis of confidence. It's just what she knows is different than what everybody else knows. And I wanted to, and so in some ways in like wanting to highlight what she knows about baking, it sort of opened up the gaps in what she didn't know. I mean, I think like the real reason is that Rosie's culinary abilities are the most like mine. So like I'm really bad at knife cuts. I can't butcher anything. And so mostly I just kind of made Rosie like me because that was the easiest to write about. And that's why her culinary skills are a lot lower than her pastry skills.
The next question is, since this book is about food, what are some of your favorite foods to eat as well as bake?
Ooh, I love pie. Pie is probably my favorite both to eat and to bake. I actually just made an apple crumb top pie for my dad's birthday. It's in the kitchen right now. I can't wait to eat it. I love pie is so deceptively simple, but like when you get that perfect bite of like a really flaky pastry crust, the fruit, and then there's like all the different toppings you can do. I have a major sweet tooth. Pretty much all of my favorite foods are baked goods. I love cheesecake. Anything with cream cheese frosting, like red velvet cake, carrot cake, really into that. Chocolate peanut butter, anything I'm into. Like if I had to list like 20 of my favorite foods, they'd probably all be dessert. And then like breakfast foods would come after that. Like I love a big diner breakfast, like pancakes, eggs, bacon, all that good stuff.
Ooh. Oh, that sounds yummy. All right. The next question is, do you think you will ever branch out of YA contemporary? And if you do, what do you think you'll write?
Yeah, I definitely. So I read a little bit of fantasy, not a lot. The idea of kind of the world building involved, I think is something that I would struggle with, kind of like creating the rules of the world. I actually have a degree in history, so the idea of historical fiction has always been appealing to me. So that's something I've thought about. And I love writing contemporary. I love writing love stories. I'm always open to thinking about other stuff. I think if I went somewhere else, I think historical fiction would be what I'm most interested in. And then every once in a while, I think about writing adult contemporary romance too, and what that would be. Because I feel like we've had a real resurgence of like awesome adult contemporary romance titles. Like I just finished The Proposal. I really enjoyed it. So I think that there's a lot of exciting things happening in that world right now too.
Oh yeah. Books are popping up everywhere.
Uh-huh.
Okay, the next question is, why did you choose to start the book with Henry and Rosie being in the airport and then on the plane?
So initially, the book didn't start like that at all. It actually started with a scene of Henry in Chicago working the cash register at his family's restaurant, and then Rosie in the kitchen at home in Ohio baking a cake for her going away party. And because I really wanted to kind of like ground them in their worlds before we get to meet them. And then my editor was like, this is too much backstory. We don't need this. Just cut it to when they meet on the plane. And I was like, okay. So there were 2 whole chapters that got cut, and then the backstory kind of like wove into them meeting on the airplane, which I had always sort of imagined they would do, just because I don't know, I liked the idea of their journey kind of starting together before everybody else at school. So it's like they kind of have this initial bond before they meet everybody else as well.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Get the story going.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would change in the book if you could?
I would change if I could. Sometimes one of the things I worry about is that because I just kind of gave Rosie the same culinary background that I have, like I worry that she comes across as too incompetent, which is not what I meant for her to be, but I think I did it intentionally. I feel like a lot of my main characters are extremely sure of themselves, and Rosie is not. And I did want to kind of write someone who is struggling to figure that out. Of course, there are like always things that I wish I could change. I feel like overall, I'm pretty happy with the way that the story has come out, but I usually don't, after they're published, I don't reread them. I feel like if I reread it, I would just find like many, many things I wish I could change. But I think you can drive yourself crazy if you go down that road too much.
Right. What are you reading right now?
I'm reading right now. So I just finished The Proposal, which I really liked, and actually Persuasion by Jane Austen. It was like the last Jane Austen I'd never read before. And then I read Josh and Hazel's Guide to Dating by Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. That was really fun. And what I'm like really deep into right now is the first book in the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, the fantasy novel. My husband recommended I read it, and like I don't usually read a lot of fantasy, so I'm going slowly through it. I'm like 500 pages in, and I think there's still like 1,000 more to go. But I think I don't know if I've really read a fantasy series since the last Game of Thrones book came out. But it's really interesting. The world building is cool. And there's a female protagonist I really like. So I'm enjoying it, although I'm going through it slowly.
All right. And that is the last question that I have for you. Do you have anything else that you would like to share with our viewers?
Just thank you so much for chatting with me. And if you guys pick up Love a la Mode, I would definitely recommend having a snack ready while you read it.
Yeah, I think I put that in our review as well. I was like, you have food on hand because you are going to want it.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you gain 5 pounds,
totally fine.
It's okay. We understand.
Yeah.
Right, well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you guys for watching. Of course, Love a la Mode is out currently. You can get it from your favorite retailer. You can enter to win this signed copy on our website. Oh my God, crossreviews.com. They just posted today. And it is a raffle copter, so make sure to check it out. And come back next week when we will be talking to Brenda Drake, the bookmark's trying to escape, for Annalise Rising, She will be on next Saturday at 1 p.m. EST. And of course, I hope everybody has a great weekend. Bye.